Hello there and welcome to the video. We are going to look at game number 3 from the World Chess Championship match. Jan Nepomniachtchi had the white pieces again against Magnus Carlsen, the reigning world champion. Will he be the reigning world champion in 2 weeks? Only time will tell. Now, the poker game, the openings poker game is underway. We had one game where they had white each, and the third game, what will happen? Will Nepo repeat what he did in the first game? And the answer was yes. He played pawn to e4. And would Carlsen deviate and go to the Sicilian to confuse him, or would he say, okay, I'm most likely going to play e5 for all the match if you play e4? And that's most likely the case. He played after e4, he played e5. And Carlsen has done very well with pawn to e5 against the king's pawn. Now we repeated game 1 with the Spanish bishop e5 a6 up to move number 8. So all well known, played tens or thousands of times, and in game 1 Nepo played h3. Did he want to play that again and have something in mind against knight a5? Would Carlsen play something else? We don't know yet. All we know is that Nepo did not want the martial attack, which happens after c3 t5. He played an anti-martial, another anti-martial. h3 was an anti-martial, and a4 is an anti-martial as well. We're threatening to take on b5, so we need to protect the rook. Bishop b7, protecting the rook. d3. So white plays more quietly, and then play will be kind of more similar, I guess, to the Italian game in a way, with this quiet setup here, but still, some differences, of course, that matter a lot. For instance, the bishop is here instead of here. Anyway, on with the game. Knight b to d2. White is getting pieces out. This typical Italian/Spanish type maneuver, most likely coming up. Rook to e8 and knight to f1. Now, h6 was played. Just to prevent the move, then knight might jump into g5 at some stage. Bishop g5 might not be ideal as well. And now bishop d2. Well, first of all, we take some squares under control. But it kind of looks weird, but with this, white is kind of saying, I'm not going to play c3 d4, at least for a while. So, more of a restrained approach, and I guess a knight maneuver is coming, pretty soon. Knight e3 or knight g3, probably knight here to control these two squares. Bishop to f8 by Carlsen, and Nepo played knight e3. But there's a noteworthy game here. Kasparov against Vlad Tkachev, played in Cannes in 2001, and there Kasparov played the same idea that Nepo would play later on in the game, c4. And we had this b takes c4, bishop takes c4. I think the idea of c4 is probably just to strengthen the grip on this diagonal. Black is never playing c5, c4 interface. Pawn here and then pawn to c4 at some stage. And these pawns kind of form a wall against this bishop, which we'll come into a bit later. In the game, Kasparov, he built up his forces and then played d4, and he won a nice game. Got some pressure, and white won. So this is relevant because Nepo plays a similar idea. After knight e3, knight e7 by Carlsen, and now Nepo plays c4, just like Kasparov. Now Carlsen took on c4, c6 also looks like a playable move, and Michael Adams played that once against Peter Svidler. That game ended in a draw in 24 moves, so c6 looks solid as well. But Carlsen took, knight takes e4, and now the novelty, as far as I'm aware, I found one game in this position where black played rook b8. So Carlsen played knight c6, which is probably a good novelty, and the other game, where Kf1 Rab8 had white against Yildiz from Turkey, shows that the strength and the power of the bishop on the diagonal is increased. And in fact, after knight takes e5, white is borderline winning. The pressure on f7 is immense, and Ke1 went on to win a pretty nice game here. Knight is coming to f7, and white won rather easily. So knight c6 prevents this business on e5. Rook c1 now by Nepo, and a5. And while this, might create a target, it also prevents a white from grabbing a lot of space. It prevents white from using this square. And black is, trying to control some square for himself as well. But it's a risky move. The pawn might become a target. Bishop c3 was played, and we see that, well, this move both helps with, when we play d4 and open it up like Kasparov, or if we want to put pressure on the pawn. Note that in this structure also these pawns, they line up pretty well against this bishop. And that kind of explains Carlsen's next move. A nice regrouping. This bishop is not doing a good job anymore on this diagonal, so Carlsen played bishop to c8. And now Nepo decides to open things up. He played d4. He figures, his pieces are optimal for the opening of the center. We have a trade, 2 trades, and then bishop e6. The idea of this maneuver. The bishop was getting strong on this diagonal. We saw its potential, especially in this Ke2 Rab8 game. So the idea here is to blunt this diagonal with a bishop, and it seems like a good idea. Now, perhaps an indication that the initiative has kind of passed away from Nepo is that he now plays a quiet move, h3. So he's not moving forward anymore. Most of his moves, he was building his pieces up towards something, playing d4, having nice bishops, but now he plays h3. It's noteworthy that we can't take on a5 because c5 and the tactics work out for black. This is hanging, and on queen d2 we can take on b3 and then e4 and a4 will hang. So h3 by Nepo, but now Carlsen finally has time to strike back on the center, and he plays c6. And here Nepo didn't really find any way forward. He played bishop c2, but now Carlsen finds the timely strike on the center with d5. Nepo played e5. He didn't fancy taking on d5 because as the knight takes d5, the knight is very strong, but it can also take either of white's bishop probably. Let's say queen d3, we have g6. Cheeky mid threat on h7, not so much maybe, but worth a shot. But g6 stops it, and if we can, we'll take this bishop. If the bishop moves, we could take the other one, and black would get a fine position. So Nepo played e5, but the problem here is that we have a queen trade, and black is able to liquidate fairly easily here, and the strong move bishop b4. Of course, we would like white to take on b4 and take back with the pawn. If not, we eliminate the bishop, and then the bishop doesn't protect the pawn on g7, so pawn takes g7. We cannot take on c3 and take the pawn on g7. So we have a number of weak pawns. It's important that white can no longer attack anything on the c file. The pawn has blocked the file, and well, the pawns are weak, but a weakness in chess isn't really a weakness unless it can't be attacked, and white doesn't really have any way to attack these weaknesses. So black is actually just fine here. It's an endgame, so we brought the king. Carlsen took the file, and Nepo kind of has to contest because otherwise both rooks would come in, rook b2 and rook d2. So he contested the file. Carlsen brought the king, and now basically we headed for a draw. They traded here, king e5. Carlsen moved the pawn, setting up the Capablanca rule, and then finishing it with c5. All the pawns he can put on dark squares, he puts on dark squares. But there's no entry for either king really, so this would just be a draw, bishop c2, bishop d7, keeping the pressure here so white really can't move anywhere. King f6, indicating he might want to walk in here, so just h4 to stop it, king back, and they repeated here. White certainly has no way to play on. He played king e2. If he plays a move like g3, you have to be careful. You can't really take on f4 because now you have two weaknesses and you might get into some kind of zugzwang and actually lose. And if you play g4, there's king f6 and your king is never getting in. so this will be a draw. So after king e2 on move 40, king e5, king f2, a draw was agreed. So yeah, by far the most by far the most quiet game so far, I guess. But you know, there's always some, you know, some tension underneath. I mean, looks like Carlsen is well prepared. This maneuver, bishop c8 and bishop e6, turned out pretty good. Might have been preparation, who knows? But it looks like it's going to be difficult for Nepo to press with the white pieces. So far he well, hasn't been successful. But on the other hand, will Carlsen be successful with white? After the free day, we'll find out. I'm not sure what will happen in game 4. Will Carlsen go for d4 again? He might switch things up, go for c4, e4. Only time will tell. But you know, it's interesting to see this, you know, this back and forth, and maybe Carlsen plays e4 and you know, tries to see where Nepo is going to defend against e4 in the match. So that might be interesting as well. In any case, I'm looking forward to it. After 3 games, it's all tied up still, but the best is yet to come, I'm sure of it. And I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.